When you think of notes in perfume, you usually don't think of strange things like whale excrement or feces, for that matter, but there are certainly those notes in certain perfumes, along with many, many other odd notes. Perfumes are more than just florals and musk and amber, the typicals. Depending on what is in a perfume, it can change completely what it smells like, even if it's just a single note or a single drop of oil. And that's pretty much the job of a perfumer, to figure out which notes go where, how much, how they should be layered to come to the result of a very nicely smelling perfume. And a lot of these notes you would not expect to be in a bottle of any fragrance, but a lot of them are actually integral parts of fragrances. A common one to start with is called Ambergris, which I actually did a full video about, which is basically a blob that is formed in the stomach of sperm whales and then coughed up eventually. And then it floats around in the ocean for a while before it washes up on the beach. And apparently it smells horrible when it's fresh. But then when, I guess, someone figured out that if you dry it out, it has a very nice musky yet floral scent with a slight marine salty note. Ambergris is a very, very common in lots of, especially very luxury perfumes, you'll find ambergris. Now, there's the question of artificial ambergris, also known as ambroxan. I think Baccarat Rouge 540 has ambergris, for example. I don't know if it's real or not, but most of the time, very, very expensive perfumes that have ambergris, it will be real, because that's what you're paying for. Meanwhile, if you find a fragrance that's pretty cheap but it claims to have ambergris, it's probably not real, it's probably just ambroxan, which is a synthetic derivative. And the synthetic version does smell pretty much identical to the real ambergris. It's just, the reason why real ambergris is so expensive is that it's a danger to the sperm whales, a danger to the conservation efforts. So it's pretty hard to actually gather ambergris anymore. It's actually illegal to even possess ambergris in some places. So most perfumers are turning towards the synthetic version. But in general, ambergris is a very odd note, but it does add a really nice musky marine scent to a lot of perfumes. Civet is another animal-derived note that is pretty odd when you think about it. Basically, it's a thick, pasty oil that's derived from civets, which are like wild, tropical, cat-like animals, and their glands, I suppose, produce this very, very musky scent, which has been popular for a very long time. Chanel No. 5 used to use real civet, which is a very, very thick and animalistic scent, very just heavy. Again, similar to ambergris, real civet is rarely used anymore, and most of the time perfumers will use synthetic civet or musk in other forms. But civet is a very, very popular animalistic note. Not as popular as it used to be. In the 20s and 80s, animalistic notes were more popular compared to today, where they're a bit less popular. But in general, that's one of the kind of weirder notes, because who would think to go up to some animal, extract the oil from their glands and make a perfume out of it? But it has happened. There is then another strange note called Labdenum. Traditionally, it was a substance that people would comb out of the fur of goats who would, happenstance, rub up against some sort of bush. And that bush, the oils, would attach to the goat's fur, harden up, and create this weird resin sort of product. And people would basically brush out the goats, and they liked the smell. It was like this kind of musky smell, and they just added it to their fragrances. again, this sort of, I guess, partially animal-derived product, not really used for the real deal anymore. Most of it is synthetic. Probably the more expensive perfumes may use the real stuff, but it's hard to get. You have to get goats, you have to get the bush for them to rub up against, and then you have to comb out the goats. So it's a lot of work for some fragrance. Now, probably the most repulsive note that you may occasionally find in perfumes is called scatol, which I guess comes from coal tar or feces. So, as you can imagine, it won't smell very good. It will smell actually very horrible. Thing is, apparently, lots of flowers have this scatol in them naturally, in very, very small quantities. So you really wouldn't smell coal tar or feces when smelling these flowers. And I guess in small quantities it just smells floral or slightly musky, which is very odd, but for that reason it is occasionally used in certain fragrances. Now, you obviously won't find it very often, but in the occasional luxury fragrance you may come across this strange note. And the last few are just, bacon is one of them. Bacon, you'll find bacon in just about everything these days, but occasionally you will find bacon notes. Sometimes there are, I've seen cactus, carrots, cannabis, hemp notes. You could pretty much use any sort of note for a fragrance. It just depends really on how you mix that note with other notes, and how the note behaves on its own or mixed with other things. But in general, if you know what you're doing, you could pretty much mix whatever you want with anything. And with enough luck and trial and error, you'll probably come up with a pretty good fragrance, or you'll come up with something terrible. But those are the strangest notes that I could find, at least according to the internet. If you have any other opinions or recommendations about odd and weird notes for fragrances, you can leave those down in the comments below. If you liked the video, leave a like, maybe subscribe, and I make videos throughout the week, so stick around for those.